Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to have you here with us today.
For having me.
Maybe you can kick off with a brief intro. I know most people will have already blitzed through the first season of Blue Lights. For people who might be coming to it fresh, can you set the scene? What happens in the show?
It is set in modern day Belfast and it's about modern day policing in Belfast. And we kick off following these three rookies. And I play the character of Grace. We've got Annie and Tommy. And they they enter into this world. They've just come out of training. They enter into this world of policing, and we follow how they navigate that, all the ups and downs. And I suppose it pulls back the curtain on what it is to do this job. That it's not just a uniform. There is a person behind it. In terms of my character, I play Grace, who is a woman in her 40s who was a social worker, and she's a single parent. And we meet her at a time when she's just decided she's going to have this huge career change. And rather than back out of the world of social care, and she's going to dive even deeper into it and become a police officer.
And I guess casting your mind back, I mean, there are a lot of police dramas out there, but there feels like there's something very special about this one. A lot of it, as we were talking about earlier, is in that writing, and hearing Declan and Adam talk about, how much love and care has gone into writing that script. So when you first picked it up, what really jumped out to you?
Well, what you said really, I remember sitting down, as an actor, you read numerous scripts, and sometimes they're sort of not, they don't jump out at you immediately, but this was, and within 3 pages I was hooked. And I think, and because the writing was so damn fine, it was that they had made a world that I didn't know. I didn't know Belfast as I do now. They had made that immediately accessible. They'd drawn these characters that were really relatable, that were recognisable. And so for me, I think, that's why it works. It works because they have created these characters that, I read it and I went, oh yeah, I have worked with someone like that. Or I know there's a guy, I know someone out in my community like that. So yeah, I think it gives you a sense of ownership, I think, over what you see in.
And coming to your character of Grace, how do you see her? How did you approach her? And then how might that have shifted, I guess, going into the second season? Because we're kind of a year on, the first season, she was very fresh to it. She was very green. Whereas she's seen a few things now, and she's in a slightly different place.
In terms of how I approached her, the same really. You read scripts and you'll be playing parts, and sometimes you'll play a part and they'll be slightly further out of reach, and you have to go, oh, if I put this and this together with a bit of this, then I can gain them, or I'll get to them. And with Grace, when I read it, there was just this immediate connection. I went, I know who this person is. I know this woman, and all the jigsaw pieces came together. I was thinking about it the other day, and what it is that appeals to me about her and why I enjoy playing her so much. And I think it is that I admire her. Like, if I met her and talked to her and I heard what it was that she was doing and where she'd come from, I think I'd be like, God, blimey hell, that's really ballsy and that's quite brave. This woman who's in her 40s, who leaves social work and becomes a police officer, she's got no support, family support in Belfast. She didn't grow up there. And yet she's on this sort of mission. And it's not because it's a selfless quality. She's not trying to do it for herself. She's on this mission to sort of make things a bit better. So, yeah, she fascinates me, I suppose.
And one of the things that really stands out about the show is just, the authenticity of it all. Not only kind of the backdrop and the setting, but even, the way the police officers behave and interact. I know your father was actually a police officer, so did that kind of help you sort of find your character, in the setting that she's in? Did you get to, I think you been going to some police stations as well. Did that kind of aid in your research process?
Yeah, it all fed into it. My dad, having been a police officer and just having grown up with him and it being part of my life, part of the fabric of my life, it was very familiar. My dad would leave, would have a uniform on when he left to go to work and come back like a father that might have a suit on and come back. So it was that I saw my dad in the uniform, not the uniform on my dad. So, and that's what I think they've tried to do with this show, is to sort of pull back the curtain on what it is to do that job and see the human behind it. In terms of seeing my dad in that job, he would come back with colleagues of his and they'd have a cup of tea or whatever. And I think subliminally maybe it's gone. And I remember watching their conversation and the banter that they had and the connection that they had. And it is quite unique in that, because you've got these ordinary people having experienced situations that I would never experience, or maybe once in my life. They're doing that on a daily basis. And so I think it just makes them strong, it makes their connection stronger. And in terms of research and going around, we went to police stations, chatted with police officers, went on ride-alongs. And the same then, I remember we went and there was a police station and we went in and there was a shift change. And the sergeant was sort of giving a history of what had happened on the previous shift to the next sort of unit and telling them what had happened. And it was about, a sort of incident, but talking about it in such a matter-of-fact way, because that is their job and they're dealing with it. Where I was sort of like, sorry, have you just heard what I've just, okay, are we, okay. Oh, right then, so it just, it all feeds in.
And of course, there are some really harrowing scenes and situations, both in the last season, seeing the first episode of the second, that Grace gets into, already, right off the bat in the pharmacy. Do you find that quite difficult to get into that headspace, or sort of afterwards to bring yourself back down? How do you kind of cope with pulling those off?
We had a fantastic police advisor with us for the majority of the filming who was so invaluable. He, so you could constantly go to them and say, the procedure, the protocol, is that how you do it, or is that? And I remember chatting with this police advisor and them saying that they had a similar incident happen to them and they were able to relay it to me. And so, you use all of that and take it on board to try and get into a place where this happens. And then in terms of, the acting, that's just my job. I'm pretending. I'm not doing the real thing. I'm just, I'm pretending. And I always feel like, it is a job and you just leave it on the set at the end of the day. Otherwise, you'll go a bit crazy.
And I guess on the flip side, like you're saying, it does quickly move us from these really traumatic, kind of gritty scenarios, and then they're back in the station, and they're sharing stuff out of their lunch boxes and having banter. I mean, it looks like it was a lot of fun and built some amazing relationships. I guess it's particularly with the guy who plays Stevie, and your relationship that kind of ebbs and flows. So, what were some of your favourite moments in that respect?
Me and Martin, we met prior to just filming series 1 for photo shoots and stuff, and we immediately hit it off. He's such a brilliant guy, and we've also share a very childish sense of humour, which is great when you're on set for long periods of time. But I would say I love the scenes in the car. They're just it's great. They're just two characters wasting the time away while the next call comes in. And I think those moments are, for me, really interesting, because you get to see how they are as humans, how they interact with each other.
In terms of what people can take away, I mean, I just found it so interesting to hear from the writers, how much love and passion has gone into, representing Belfast, and kind of feeding in, bits of their history. But despite all these really dark scenarios, there is a sense of hope and optimism, and I know a lot of that comes from Grace and her kind of desire to do things a bit differently. So what do you think people can take away from watching it?
Well, exactly that I remember Declan talking to me about his experience as a journalist and the things that he's seen in that job. And he said, look, I've seen the best of, people, the worst of people. But and he said, at the end of the day, he said, people are essentially good. Majority of the people are essentially good. And I think that's the thing to take away from this show, is that a majority of the people are essentially good. And in terms of Grace, she's just trying to do the right thing. She might make mistakes. Yes, it might get a bit messy, but she's trying. Do you know what I mean? And she doesn't give up. And that is, for me, is a great takeaway.
And I guess also really humanizing the people that are police officers. Yeah. And I think, hearing that, how it really changed the guy that you're in the taxi with, that people could be kind of dismissive or have quite, prejudices against someone who's a police officer. And the fact that a TV show can kind of really change someone's perspective feels quite powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And when I get, going back to Belfast after series 1, that was the sort of predominant thing, is that people would come up and they'd say, I don't really watch shows that are made about my home city, or I don't tend to watch them because they never really represent what it's actually like now. But I watched this and I loved it. And so, you can't get a better accolade than that. But you think about the recent post office story on that show and what that did. So it's very heartening to hear.
And just very quickly, finally, in terms of what you've got next, I know there's a 3rd and 4th season already in the pipeline for that. But I know you've also been working on Trying and other projects. So what have you got next?
So Trying is out. It's out just following this, and it's a brilliant series. I love doing it. I mean, I've been really lucky. It's another long-running series. It's series 4 that's coming out now, and it's even better. It just gets better and better every time we do it. And then I'm also doing a show called Supercell that comes out, Netflix, which I think is in early summer as well.
Amazing. I love that I read somewhere that you called your Trying character a bit of a Karen.
Yeah, but she's called Karen, and I didn't know the reference until I had never heard of the reference of Karen until I started working on this job. And then how I meet lots of Karens and I feel like I have to apologise. And they say, my name's Karen. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Brilliant. Well, I'm out of time, but thank you so much for showing up with me. And I really can't wait for everyone to get stuck into season 2. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.